The soft hum of the vending machine was the only sound that kept Noah Keane company. The maternity ward's waiting room was coated in that generic beige-gray paint hospitals seemed to favor, the color of limbo. His fingers tapped the armrest of the fake leather chair, while his eyes flicked from the wall clock to his phone and back. It was 3:27 p.m. A nurse had wheeled his wife, Lauren, into the delivery room 2 hours ago. The contractions were tight, her face pale but determined. Noah had stayed with her as long as he could before a flood of staff pushed him out gently, telling him to wait. So here he was, sitting alone with a plastic cup of bad coffee, while the woman he'd spent 7 years building a life with brought their daughter into the world. He smiled a little to himself at the thought. Their daughter. They'd fought about names for months, but finally agreed. Elena. Noah liked strong, old-fashioned names. Lauren wanted something elegant and literary. Elena was their middle ground. His phone buzzed. Mom, we're downstairs. Should we come up yet? He typed, not yet. Still in labor. Then stared at the message, deleted it, and retyped. Give it another hour. I'll update you. He didn't know why he rewrote it. Maybe to sound more in control. Maybe to make himself feel like he was doing something. Truth was, he hadn't felt in control for a while now. Lauren had been different lately. She was distant, unpredictable. In her 3rd trimester, she began spending long afternoons out of the house, claiming she needed walks to clear her head. Sometimes she came back smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't his. Noah had asked about it once. She laughed and said he was paranoid. You think I'm cheating on you with a belly this big? She had said, hand resting protectively over her bump. He had let it go. Now he waited. At 3:46 p.m., a nurse stepped in. Mr. Keane. He stood up fast. Yes? You have a daughter. Healthy, 7 pounds, 2 ounces. His throat tightened. Can I see her? Of course. Follow me. He followed the nurse through sterile white corridors, heart pounding, palms damp. The delivery room smelled like antiseptic and sweat, and something else, newness. Life. Lauren lay on the bed, pale but glowing. Her eyes found his and softened. She's perfect, she said, her voice hoarse. The nurse handed him the baby, wrapped in a pink-striped blanket. He looked down at her and felt something shift inside him, like his soul had just grown a second heartbeat. Tiny hands. Featherweight breath. His daughter. Then he looked at her ankle. A small white bracelet was wrapped there. The hospital ID tag. He blinked. Infant girl Mason. DOB 08/03. Mother. Lauren Mason. Noah's stomach sank. His name was Noah Keane, not Mason. He turned toward the nurse. This is wrong. That's not her name. The nurse double-checked the clipboard. This is the information the mother gave. Mason is the maternal surname? No, it's not, Noah said tightly. Her legal last name is Keane. She took mine when we got married. Lauren said nothing. He looked at her. She didn't meet his eyes. The vending machine buzzed quietly in the corner of the maternity ward lounge, its neon glow bouncing off the linoleum tiles like a flickering apology. Noah Keane sat in a molded plastic chair, the kind that made your spine ache after 15 minutes. He'd been there almost an hour. His phone sat face down on the chair next to him. Coffee cooled in his hand. His foot tapped restlessly against the floor. The air smelled of antiseptic, burnt coffee, and the weight of something momentous. He could feel it in his chest. This was the day his life changed. His wife, Lauren, was giving birth to their first child, a girl. A nurse had come out 42 minutes ago to say Lauren was pushing. Then nothing. No news, no update. Just the clock ticking. Noah leaned forward, rubbing his hands together. He hated hospitals. Too many tubes, too many things beeping in erratic rhythms. Everything felt one heartbeat away from panic. Still, this hospital, Providence General, was the best in town. Clean, new, expensive. The kind of place with hardwood floors in the recovery suites and cappuccino machines in the lobby. Lauren had insisted on it. Only the best for Elena, she'd said. Elena. They'd picked the name after weeks of back and forth. Lauren had vetoed half the ones Noah suggested. Too basic, too trendy. Sounds like a dog's name. Noah, in turn, had shot down her more avant-garde ideas. Finally, they'd landed on something elegant, simple, timeless. He tried to focus on that. The name, the life waiting to begin. But the anxiety wouldn't leave him. Not the kind that came from waiting, the other kind. The kind that had been building for months now. Lauren had been distracted. First it was the long walks. Then the weekend errands that took 4 hours. Then the silence. Noah tried not to overthink it. Pregnancy was hard. Hormones. Fatigue. He chalked it up to that. But there had been signs. Her texts had become vague. She started turning her phone face down around him. Once, while she was in the shower, it buzzed and lit up with a name Noah didn't recognize. R. Marsh. He didn't open it. He wasn't that guy. At least, he hadn't been. Until 3 weeks ago. He'd checked her phone while she slept. Found nothing suspicious, just photos of recipes, baby items, appointment reminders. The thread with R. Marsh was empty. Clean. Too clean. When he asked who it was, Lauren said it was a co-worker she'd barely talked to. Some back-end IT guy? Still, something about her tone. Forced casual, stuck in his teeth like a splinter. He hadn't mentioned it again. But the feeling lingered. In the quiet between them. In the way she didn't want him in the delivery room once labor got serious. Just for now, she'd said breathlessly as they wheeled her away. Let me breathe. So he waited. Alone. At 4:09 p.m., the door opened. A nurse stepped out, all smiles and calm authority. Mr. Keene. He jumped to his feet. Yes, that's me. Congratulations. Your wife delivered a healthy baby girl. 7 pounds, 1 ounce. Both are doing well. His chest filled with something warm and sharp all at once. A mixture of pride, relief, and unspeakable awe. Can I see her? Of course, the nurse said. Follow me. He followed her through quiet corridors that smelled like bleach and warmth. They passed a wall covered in baby footprints and pastel plaques that said things like, "You were born today," and "Welcome to the world." When they stepped into the recovery room, time seemed to hiccup. Lauren was lying on the hospital bed, pale but smiling softly, her hair a tangled halo. In her arms, a bundle swaddled in a white and pink blanket squirmed gently. The nurse stepped forward and gently transferred the baby into Noah's arms. His hand shook slightly. The moment felt surreal. The room faded. It was just him and her, his daughter. Hi, he whispered to the baby. Hi, sweetheart. He glanced down at the bracelet wrapped around her ankle. The tiny hospital band, printed in blue text. His brow furrowed. Infant girl Mason. DOB 08/03. Mother, Lauren Mason. His breath caught. Wait, he said. The nurse turned. This has the wrong name. The nurse blinked. What do you mean? Mason? That's not our last name. It should be Keene. Lauren Keene. We're married. The nurse hesitated. This is the name on the birth registration form. Signed by the mother. Noah looked at Lauren. Her expression didn't change. You used your maiden name? He asked slowly. She didn't answer. Just looked down at the sheet, at nothing in particular. Noah turned back to the nurse. There's been a mistake. That's not right. She hasn't used Mason in 6 years. I can double-check, the nurse said carefully. But the file was reviewed by maternity admin. He handed the baby back slowly, gently. The warmth in his chest turned cold. Lauren finally looked at him. I didn't think it would matter, she said, voice flat. Noah stared at her, numb. What are you talking about? She didn't blink. I was just thinking. About what? He demanded. Why our daughter is wearing your last name. Her lips parted slightly. Her eyes didn't meet his. I didn't want to argue about names after delivery, she said quietly. That wasn't an answer. That was a sidestep. The nurse cleared her throat awkwardly. I'll give you both a moment. Noah didn't even acknowledge her as she left. He was too busy staring at the woman he thought he knew, the woman lying in the hospital bed holding a baby who might not even be his. And suddenly, the bracelet was all he could see. The silence in the hospital room was thick, clotted, like blood that had dried too long on gauze. Noah stared at the baby's bracelet as though it were a ticking bomb. Infant girl Mason. He'd read it 4 times. 5. 6. But each time the letters carved deeper, like someone had branded them onto his ribs. Lauren lay back against the pillows, too calm. She ran a hand over her temple, as if this was just another one of his anxious moments. Like when he overreacted about the finances last spring, or about her weird schedule 2 months ago, or about the deleted texts she claimed were storage issues. This wasn't anxiety. This was something else. What do you mean you didn't want to argue about names? Noah asked, his voice low but sharp. Lauren didn't look at him. Her eyes tracked the heart monitor behind him like it might save her. I didn't think it mattered that much in the moment. I was in pain. I just filled out the forms the way I used to. You haven't used Mason since 2017. She shrugged. It's still my name. Technically. His stomach twisted. You signed the birth certificate as Mason? She nodded once. Without me. You weren't there. I was in the damn cafeteria downstairs, grabbing the tea you asked for. Noah stood, pacing. The chair screeched behind him, but he didn't care. He couldn't breathe in here. The room felt hot, thick with lies. Did the nurse ask you about the father's information? Lauren didn't respond. Noah stopped pacing. He stared. You left me off the certificate? Silence. His throat constricted. Lauren. She finally looked at him. Her eyes were unreadable. I didn't know if I wanted your name on it. That hit harder than any truth. For a second, he couldn't speak. He just stood there, stunned. Something in him curled up and died. Is she mine? The question cracked the air open. Lauren blinked. Slowly. Of course. You hesitated. I just had a baby, Noah, she snapped, voice rising for the first time. Maybe try being supportive instead of interrogating me. He stared at her. Supportive of what, exactly? I'm exhausted. I just pushed a human out of my body, and all you care about is what's on some bracelet. Because that bracelet tells me everything I need to know. The baby let out a small, sighing whimper. Noah looked at her, and his heart clenched. She looked so peaceful, so innocent. But his mind was somewhere else now. Racing, recalculating. Later that evening, when Lauren had finally dozed off and the baby was wheeled to the nursery for a checkup, Noah stepped out of the room and walked back to the front desk of the maternity ward. A young woman in scrubs greeted him with a tight smile. Can I help you? He swallowed hard. Yeah, I need to ask about the birth certificate paperwork for room 304B. Lauren Mason. Are you the father? His mouth opened, then closed. He nodded. She tapped a few keys. Let me see. Lauren Mason. Delivered at 3:48 p.m. today. Looks like she completed the certificate form. Mother's information entered. Infant's surname listed as Mason. What about the father's section? The nurse tilted her head. She left it blank. That's not uncommon if the mother's not married or doesn't want to disclose it at the time. She is married, Noah said through clenched teeth. To me, she didn't indicate that. The woman's tone shifted slightly, defensive now. Look, Mr. Keene. She hesitated, then glanced back at the screen. I'm sorry. Only the mother filled and signed the form. Noah stared at the desk. Can I see the form? I'm afraid I can't give you access unless you're listed as a legal guardian or parent. Which she made sure I'm not, he muttered bitterly. Sir, nothing. He turned and walked away, fists clenched so tightly his nails bit into his palms. Back in the room, Lauren was half asleep, eyes fluttering as Noah stepped in. He stood over her. Quiet. Measured. Who is he? She opened one eye. What? He didn't repeat himself. She didn't answer. Noah sat down. The father, Lauren. You're her father, she said flatly. Then why'd you give her someone else's name? She said nothing. He leaned forward. I swear to God, if you don't. Do you remember Ross? The name landed like a punch. Ross Marsh. That fucking name from her phone. From the text. From the lie. He didn't speak. Just stared. He came by a few months ago, she said softly. We talked. It wasn't supposed to go further. It just did. You slept with him? She looked away. Once. He laughed bitterly. Once. Of course. She sat up now, rubbing her temples. I didn't plan any of this, Noah. I panicked. When I found out I was pregnant, I didn't know who the father was. But I hoped. You hoped it was mine. She nodded. And I still do. He stood. Lauren's voice cracked. Noah, I didn't want to blow up our lives. You just forgot to mention a possible second candidate for fatherhood. I was scared. Of what? Me? Or the truth? They stared at each other. There was no screaming. No slamming doors. Just stillness. A vacuum where trust used to live. Noah left that night. He told her he was going home to get fresh clothes. He didn't go home. He drove to a 24-hour pharmacy and bought a DNA paternity test kit. And the next morning, when the nurse brought the baby back into the room, he smiled politely, cradled the girl in his arms, and gently took a buccal swab from the inside of her tiny cheek. Lauren didn't even notice. She was too busy scrolling through her phone. The envelope came 2 weeks later. A standard white mailer, no logo, just a barcode and Noah's name written in block letters. It looked like any other piece of mail, dull, unassuming. And yet it pulsed in his hands like it was alive. He didn't open it right away. He sat with it, Let it sit on his nightstand for a full day, untouched. Lauren had been home from the hospital for about a week. Her incision scar was healing. Her body moved slower, heavier. She held the baby like she was fragile glass and kissed her forehead constantly, a doting mother in every way. But she barely looked at Noah. Their words had shriveled to the basics. Pass the wipes. The bottle is on the counter. He'll handle the night feed. And then silence. Every time she said, our daughter, Noah felt something constrict in his chest. He had named the file folder on his computer Claire, unconfirmed. He couldn't call her Elena anymore. That name had belonged to something whole. He didn't want revenge. Not yet. He wanted the truth, not in Lauren's voice, not filtered through guilt or fear. He wanted the sterile, mathematical finality of genetics. So the next morning, while Lauren was out on a walk with the stroller, she liked to take Claire around the block 3 or 4 times a day, like she was proving something. Noah sat at the dining table, coffee untouched, and opened the envelope. Inside, 2 pieces of paper, a sample ID report, and the results summary. He didn't read every line. He went straight to the one that mattered. Probability of paternity, 0. 0%. He stared at it for 10, maybe 15 minutes. No sound, no movement, just the soft buzz of the refrigerator and the occasional scream of a crow outside. Then he stood up, walked to the sink, and washed his hands. They were shaking, though he hadn't noticed. Lauren returned later that afternoon, cheeks flushed from the cold, baby in arms. Noah was in the kitchen, chopping carrots he wouldn't eat. She didn't say anything. Neither did he. He watched her swaddle Claire, sing to her, touch her like something sacred. He wondered if the man who gave her that child had any idea. If Ross Marsh knew that his DNA was now sleeping in Noah's house, wrapped in Noah's towels, suckling at bottles Noah sterilized. Later that night, after Claire had fallen asleep in the bassinet, Noah sat beside Lauren on the couch. You lied. It wasn't a question. Lauren looked at him slowly. Her eyes were duller than he remembered, like the shine had been scraped out of her. You opened the test, she said. You knew I would. Silence. Noah leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You knew it wasn't mine the moment she came out. That's why you signed your maiden name. I didn't know for sure. You hoped I wouldn't check. I hoped it wouldn't matter. He turned, staring at her in disbelief. What the hell does that mean? I thought maybe you'd love her anyway. Noah sat back, eyes wide. A bitter laugh escaped him. That's not how this works, Lauren. You don't get to fuck someone else, get pregnant, lie about it for 9 months, and then ask me to love the result like it's mine. She's still a baby, Lauren whispered. She didn't do anything wrong. But you did. Her eyes filled. Finally, I didn't want to lose everything. Then you should have thought about that before letting Ross Marsh shove his regrets into you in some parking lot. Her slap was fast, sharp. His head barely moved, but something inside him clicked. He stood up slowly, not angry, not dramatic, just done. I want her out of this house. Lauren's face collapsed. You don't mean that. I want the child who is not mine, who you knowingly lied to me about, out of my house. She's my daughter. She's his. And I hope you call him. I hope you hand him the baby and say, surprise. See how long he sticks around. You're acting like she's a mistake. She is, Noah said coldly. Your mistake. Lauren went quiet. The kind of quiet that hurts to look at. Her arms wrapped around her stomach instinctively, even though the baby wasn't there. I'm not abandoning her, she whispered. Then pack your things. She looked up sharply. What? You can go. Stay at your sister's. At a hotel. I don't care. Noah. I won't raise her. And I won't pretend. His voice didn't rise. If anything, it had grown calmer. Lauren stared, eyes wide, trying to read him, but he was unreadable now. Not rage, not grief. Just clarity. Cold, efficient clarity. You said you loved me, she whispered. I loved someone who didn't exist. That night, Noah didn't sleep. He sat in the nursery, Claire's nursery, the room he'd painted seafoam green, with the handmade mobile still spinning slowly above the crib. He stared at the walls. The name Elena was still there, spelled in gold letters across the shelf above the changing table. He stood up, peeled each one off, letter by letter, and threw them in the trash. In the dark, he opened his laptop. Searched. What legal rights does a husband have over a non-biological child? How to remove name from birth certificate if not listed? What happens if mother lied about paternity? Each result opened a door, not of escape, but of strategy. He didn't want to yell. He wanted this to end cleanly, brutally, completely, and he would make sure Lauren felt every inch of the silence she'd forced into him. The attorney's office smelled like old paper and disinfectant. Noah sat across from a woman named Shelley Greer, who looked like she'd spent the last 20 years sharpening herself for exactly this kind of case. She flipped through the documents he had brought: marriage certificate, birth certificate, the printed paternity report with 0% bolded in red ink. "You're not listed on the birth certificate," she confirmed. "No." "Smart woman," Shelley muttered, more to herself than to him. "That makes things cleaner." Noah said nothing, just stared at the corner of the desk. He hadn't spoken much since entering the building. He didn't need to. This wasn't therapy. This was surgery. Because you're not the legal father, there's no custody to fight over. No financial obligation. But, she paused, tapping her pen against the paper, you'll still want to file a legal declaration. Something formal. To protect yourself from any future claims. Done. And you want the house? I paid the mortgage, Noah replied. She hasn't worked in 2 years. I paid for everything. The car. The crib. That stroller she parades around like a fucking trophy. Shelley raised a brow, but didn't comment. Do you want to file for separation or divorce? Divorce. Understood. She slid the documents forward. You'll need to serve her papers. If you want, we can have that done. No, he said. He picked up the pen. I want to hand them to her myself. Lauren didn't answer the door right away. When she did, she had Claire on her hip and a tired, defeated look in her eyes. Her hair was undone. No makeup. The kind of raw, honest mess Noah remembered seeing in college, when they were younger, before the lies. Hey, she said, unsure. What's going on? He handed her the envelope. She didn't take it at first, just looked at it like it might bite her. I had them drawn up this week, he said. What is it? Divorce papers. Full rights waived. You keep the baby. I keep the house. She laughed, but it was brittle, hopeless. Jesus, Noah. You wanted to keep the truth to yourself? Now you can keep everything else, too. I didn't mean for this to happen. Then why did it? I was lonely, she snapped. You were always working, always tired, always. So you climbed back into bed with your ex-boyfriend and told yourself it was a coping mechanism. Claire squirmed in her arms. Lauren adjusted her, whispering calming nonsense. I didn't want this, she said. I didn't want it to end like this. Noah stared at her for a long time. I used to think you were smarter than this. Stronger. I made a mistake. No, he said quietly. You made a choice. He turned to leave. Behind him, her voice cracked. Do you ever think about her? About what she'll feel when she grows up and finds out none of this was normal? He paused, then looked over his shoulder. I think she'll hate you. That night, Lauren sat on the floor in Claire's nursery, the papers open in front of her. The word divorce looked bigger than it was. She hadn't thought he'd actually go through with it. Not Noah. Not Mr. Let's talk about it. He had always been the fixer. The patient one. She'd assumed he would scream, cry, maybe even beg. She hadn't expected this cold, surgical abandonment. She rocked Claire back and forth, but her mind was unraveling faster than her arms could soothe. Her sister didn't answer her texts. Her mother's only message had been, you lied to a good man. What did you expect? Lauren pressed her forehead against the edge of the crib. Claire made a small, sleepy sigh, and Lauren whispered, I'm sorry. But she wasn't sure who she was saying it to. 3 days later, Noah returned to the house. Alone. He moved through the rooms like a ghost. The bed was stripped. Her clothes gone. The bathroom shelf was empty except for his razor and toothbrush. The nursery door was closed. He didn't open it. Instead, he went to the garage and dragged in a bucket of white paint. No more seafoam green. No more pastel reminders. Just blank walls. Blank everything. It took him 5 hours. He repainted in silence. No music. No podcast. Just the scrape of the roller and the smell of chemicals. When it was done, he stood in the middle of the room and stared at the walls, now clean and colorless. Like none of it had ever happened. The divorce was finalized in 6 weeks. Noah didn't attend the last hearing. Shelley handled it. Lauren didn't contest. There was nothing to contest. He got the house, the car, the savings account. She got custody of the child she had chosen, and the silence of the man she had destroyed. He received one email from her afterward. Subject line, I'm sorry. He didn't open it. He archived it with the others, 12 in total, each unread, sitting in a folder labeled closure. On the day the final paperwork arrived, Noah sat on the porch and watched the rain bleed down the street. He didn't feel anything. Not anger. Not peace. Just the soft weight of nothingness. A neighbor walked by with a stroller. Noah glanced. For a second, his heart jumped. The absurd instinct to look for her. But it wasn't Claire. It never would be. He leaned back in the chair, closed his eyes, and let the thunder roll overhead. Some storms, he'd learned, don't come with warning. They come with a bracelet. The silence was permanent now. At first, Lauren thought she'd get used to it. She even told herself it was peaceful. No one stomping around upstairs, no passive-aggressive drawer slams, no Noah whispering razor-blade words beneath his breath. But silence is a liar. It seduces you, then smothers you. The apartment her sister let her borrow was barely big enough for one adult, let alone a mother and a newborn. The windows faced an alley where trash trucks howled at 5 a.m. The kitchen sink dripped like a slow, unending reminder of her failures. Claire slept in a borrowed bassinet beside the bed. The wallpaper peeled above her. Lauren taped it down once, then gave up. Her days were a loop of diapers, bottles, more diapers, and Claire's cries. Sharp, primal, the only voice in the world that still depended on her. Lauren clung to that sound like it proved she was still human. Her phone buzzed sometimes, but it was never Noah. He hadn't called, hadn't texted. She didn't expect forgiveness, but the void he left behind was deeper than she thought possible. It wasn't just absence. It was annihilation. The court hearing had lasted 17 minutes. She sat with her lawyer, who looked at her with the polite distance of someone professionally required to care. Noah didn't show up. That hurt more than it should have. Even a fight would have felt like something. She signed the paperwork, walked out into the cold. A single text from Noah's lawyer came later that evening. Finalized. That was it. No signature. No kindness. Just the word. Cold and absolute. Finalized. Lauren tried reaching out once more. She typed the message slowly, deliberately. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I hope someday you can look at Claire and not see what I did, but who she is. She smiles in her sleep now. I think she has your nose. I know she's not yours, but I wish she had been. She stared at it for 20 minutes, then sent it. He never replied. Her sister, Erin, came by once a week with groceries. She didn't bring her kids. She didn't stay long. You need to apply for support, Erin said one afternoon, setting down a bag of diapers. I don't want Ross's money. You think Ross wants to parent? Erin snapped. You're doing this alone, Lauren. Might as well get something out of it. Lauren shook her head. If I file, he'll know she exists. He'll ruin whatever's left of her future. What's left? Erin asked. No father. No husband. No job. You think martyrdom will keep you warm at night? Lauren didn't respond. Erin stood in the doorway, sighing. You don't get to call yourself the victim anymore. That one stung. Worse than Noah's silence. Worse than her mother's voicemail. You embarrassed this family. Everyone wanted her to pay. To atone. But there was no currency for what she'd broken. No apology weighty enough. No way back. Only forward. Into a life she hadn't planned. Some nights, Lauren stayed awake long after Claire had fallen asleep. She scrolled through old photos of her and Noah, smiling at a summer concert, painting the nursery, laughing over pancakes at 2 a.m. The man in those photos felt fictional now. He had been gentle, predictable, loyal. He loved boring shows and sharp coffee and the feeling of being right. He would have been a good father, maybe even a perfect one. She remembered how he used to talk to the baby bump, telling jokes, making up songs. He would have done late-night feeds, diaper runs, first day of school drop-offs. But she never gave him the chance. She stole that future from him. She knew it when the second pink line appeared on the test, and her first thought wasn't joy. It was fear. Fear that it wasn't Noah's. Fear that she had detonated something sacred. She had slept with Ross once. One night. One drink too many. One bad decision resurrecting the worst version of herself. Ross never wanted kids. Never wanted a life with her. He was a scar, not a soulmate. And she'd used him like a bandage. A stupid, desperate bandage for a loneliness she refused to admit to. She hadn't been able to say it aloud, not even to Noah. I wanted someone else to see me. And now no one did. Claire was 5 months old when she took her first real laugh. A deep, baby belly chuckle that filled the apartment and shattered something inside Lauren. She cried for 20 minutes after that, held Claire close and whispered, I'm sorry. until her voice gave out. Claire didn't know, couldn't know, but someday she would. Someday she'd ask, "Where's Daddy?" And Lauren would have to say, "He left." And Claire would ask why. And Lauren would have to decide between truth or mercy. She'd already failed at one. She'd try to offer the other. She applied for work-from-home jobs in customer service. Got hired by a call center in Ohio that didn't care she was a single mom. She worked nights, fed Claire during breaks, collapsed into bed at dawn. Noah's name never came up again. But every time a man in a coffee shop had his height or wore his cologne, her heart stalled. She didn't want him back. She wanted the version of herself that hadn't lost him. One day, 6 months after the divorce, she was sorting laundry when Claire rolled onto her side and grabbed a photo off the floor. An old one. Noah smiling, hand on Lauren's shoulder, his other hand on her belly. Claire slapped it with her palm, giggling. Lauren sat down beside her. "You'd have loved him," she whispered. Then, quieter. "But he deserved better than me." It was a crisp fall morning in late October, and the leaves along the trail in Riverside Grove curled inward like they, too, had given up. Noah Keene moved down the path with a black coffee in one hand and nothing in the other. It had become his ritual, weekends alone, no phone, no emails. Just miles of cold air and silence. He liked the quiet now. It didn't threaten him like it used to. Silence had become his ally, his shield. There had been noise before, loud, sick noise. The cries, the arguments, the sharp click of truth dropping between two people like a blade. But not anymore. Now there was only the sound of gravel under boots, wind pressing through bare trees, and the occasional rustle of a jogger or dog walker passing by, too absorbed in their own thoughts to recognize him. He preferred it that way. Noah hadn't dated. Not since the divorce. There were offers, setups. One woman left her number on a receipt. Another leaned into his shoulder at the gym, said something about his eyes. He'd smiled, nodded, and deleted the text before it was ever sent. It wasn't bitterness. Not anymore. It was fatigue. He wasn't afraid of love. He was afraid of rebuilding, of pretending again, of laying foundations over hollow soil and calling it a home. Trust had become a foreign language, something he could recognize, but no longer speak. Once a month, like clockwork, Lauren sent photos of Claire. Unsolicited. Unreplied to. They came from an email she knew he wouldn't block. Each one titled the same way. Claire, month 4. Claire, month 5. Claire, month 6. By month 9, he stopped opening them. But he never deleted them. They sat in a folder named Unclaimed. Dozens of images with thumbnails he refused to click on. Some days, he hated himself for keeping them. Other days, he hated himself for not looking. Once, when he was drunk enough and stupid enough, he opened one. It was Claire in a pumpkin onesie, grinning, her little hand reaching up for something just out of frame. He stared at it for a long time, then closed the laptop and walked out into the snow barefoot. The cold burned his skin. He stood there until he couldn't feel it anymore. He didn't wonder how Lauren was doing. That was the cleanest cut, one he refused to bandage. Her part in his life was over. She didn't exist anymore in the version of the world he allowed himself to wake up in. But Claire? Claire lingered. She was the unfinished story, the sentence that ended mid-word. A child he had cradled for 15 seconds and never again. Sometimes he dreamed about her. Not as a baby, but older. A toddler in a yellow raincoat splashing in puddles. A 7-year-old girl in the front row of a school play. A teenager yelling, "You're not my father," in a voice that wasn't hers. He didn't wake up crying. He just woke up tired. On the trail, he passed a woman pushing a stroller. She wore a green scarf, like Lauren used to. The stroller was the same model, black frame, brown leather handle. He looked away. Didn't want to see. Didn't want to wonder. The woman said good morning. He nodded, didn't speak. Noah returned home around noon. The house was cleaner now, stripped of anything soft. No toys. No high chair. No folded blankets. The nursery had become a storage room with closed blinds. He hadn't entered in 6 months. The only thing that remained from the life before was a photo frame buried in his desk drawer. He didn't keep it out, but he hadn't thrown it away either. It was the hospital picture, the one the nurse had taken. Him, Lauren, and Claire. Hours after birth. He hadn't even looked at the baby's face in that photo. Just remembered the bracelet. That fucking bracelet. Infant girl Mason. The moment, everything split. He sat on the edge of the bed, opened the drawer, took out the photo. Then, for the first time in almost a year, He stared at Claire's face. She was beautiful, undeniably. Not his, but beautiful. His chest didn't ache, but it didn't feel whole either. He ran a finger over the glass, just once, then whispered, without drama or sentiment, "I could have loved you." And with that, he slid the photo back into the drawer, closed it, and stood up. There was no moral, no epiphany, just the weight of what would never be.